So I'm here with Judith Escalona. She's a filmmaker behind a brilliant feature, BX3M. Welcome to Warsaw. Lovely to meet
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you again.
Stephen.
Thank you.
It's great to see you.
So obviously I've seen the film. I know sort of inside out, but if you could just give us a brief synopsis for those that haven't.
BX3M is about 3 Latino kids, teenagers growing up in the Bronx. That's the BX. And then it's Maria, Mona, and Michael. Those are the 3 M's.
Yeah.
And it's a film that's divided into 3 parts, and each part really focuses on one of the teenagers. And they're all friends, and one is a boyfriend and girlfriend relationship. And the other one's like 2 girlfriends who are close, you know, best of friends. And it's just seeing what drama unfolds, like with their own personal lives and what they're going through. And the conceit is one of being seniors in high school.
Yeah.
And they're getting ready to graduate. And so 2 of them do graduate and one of them doesn't. And you kind of see what goes wrong and which are the lives that are able to succeed, even overcoming circumstances in the inner city. And so I always try to think of when people think of the Bronx or the South Bronx, they're always thinking of it in a certain way, as a gritty place. And
which I picked up on, and you kind of corrected me.
That was your next question, I think.
Well, you kind of correctly corrected me.
And so, you know, it's to think of, and so there's a certain image of the people who live in the Bronx, and it's really a really distorted image. And so this film sort of attempts on some level to correct that. And certainly because we have a Supreme Court justice now, Sonia Sotomayor, in the United States, our Supreme Court justice is a woman who was born and raised in the Bronx and who lived in the inner city. And she's someone who really, although was subject to those same circumstances of the inner city, was not really overwhelmed by it, did not succumb to that, and was able to actually, you know, push on and succeed. And so the film sort of tries to look at that in certain respects, and then what allows certain students or certain young people to rise above their circumstances, and why others, unfortunately, don't.
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to talk about the end without talking about the end in terms of giving it away.
You can give it away.
No.
That's funny, because I always love to hear the full story of a film, but I guess most people don't.
Well, the sequence at the end with the shooting, which was quite bleak, or towards the end, not right at the end, but towards the end.
Right at the end, you're right.
Yeah, and it was quite nihilistic, but I'm guessing, it's a stupid question, because you obviously done that for a reason. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, I assume you considered different ways of ending the film, but why did you choose to have that? It's not entirely bleak, but there's a shooting there, and then perhaps you can explain why you decided to do that.
Well, that's interesting, because it's really Michael's the last section is the story of Michael. So Maria's the first, Mona's the second, and Michael is the last. And Michael really is someone who was sort of overcoming, in a sense, for me, he's the tragic hero, because his mother was killed in a crossfire, and you know, just a kind of cliche drug trafficking, a crossfire fight, and he was a little boy, so he witnessed his mother's death. And so as a young adult, as a teenager, he's at a party and his best friend gets killed by a drug dealer. So it's almost overcoming his past. He avenges his mother's death in the present. And so his past and his present fuse together. And so he almost really follows the classic hero model. When his father tells him, "You're a man now, I can't tell you what to do," it's really signaling a rite of passage.
Yeah.
And so he kills the drug dealer at the end. And so he's avenging the death of his best friend, but he's also avenging the death of his mother, something that his father didn't do. And he actually carries that within him. He's always angry, and that's partly because he's stuck in that past moment. It's what keeps him from really pushing beyond that and being available to Maria, who he really loves, and she really loves him, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work because he's like really trapped until that one moment at the end.
Yeah.
So it's kind of operatic too. I mean, I love the opera, so
Operatic, yeah.
on some level maybe.
It's, we were lucky enough to meet a filmmaker in London who'd done this film, something Denmark Street, and it's all about the gentrification of a certain part of London in terms of there used to be an amazing studio there, you know, the likes of David Bowie, Mick Jagger, Elton John, they all used it. But that's changed because the new money's come in, and like everything in these big cities, it's kind of destroyed that fabric and the history's disappearing and been taken over by the people with money. So the point I'm trying to make is, it's something you said off camera about how, you know, it might have been like that during the Serpico days in the Bronx, you know, that gritty, but I'm guessing, in fact, I'm very sure that the gentrification there is happening with the new money coming in.
It's not, you know, I go there, it's like completely different. It's no longer, I mean, if you think, there's a documentary called A Decade of Fire that's really going around the country, actually. And it's about the devastation in the Bronx. And you're talking about, it looked like Berlin,
1974 or whatever. Oh, right.
No,
Flattened,
1944. You know, when we bombed the crap out of Berlin, when the Allies, really the Americans, bombed Berlin, and all that rubble and the shells of buildings, that's what the South Bronx looked like.
Really? It was that bad?
Yeah, it was that bad. And that's why when in my opening with the two boys, when Michael and his best friend Pusshead, they're getting high, they were supposed to be getting high in one of those buildings, and they're actually supposed to climb out. Oh, I say that in the green room. They're supposed to climb out of a window and just walk through rubble, through bricks. That's all there was. The sidewalk was gone. I mean, you know, it was just full of bricks. It was like a huge empty lots. You would walk down the street and it would just be empty lots.
And now, if I wanted to buy a one-bedroom apartment, a tiny apartment, I'd be looking at God knows what.
Probably, I don't know, $400,000, something like that.
Yeah, similar to London. But the trouble is, it's priced. We're kind of going off piece here, but the reason I bring it up because I know it's priced youngsters out, and that's the same everywhere. And it's sad. I mean, it's sad to see. It's nice to have new and nice to, you know, make things better, but I'm not sure if that's those kind of things of what's happening in London is better because the history's going, the community's disappearing, and
right. It's like
it's sad.
It's like everyone says. I forget. There's a quote that Chomsky made, where a general, I think an Argentinian general said, or was it a Brazilian general said, the economy is doing very well, but the people aren't. Meaning, people, you gentrify an area, but when you gentrify it or when you rebuild an area, you basically push the people who are living there out, which is unfortunate because they'd like to have really nice properties to live in, rather than, you know, living in a slum. And anyway, I mean,
no, I love hearing about something.
It's happening internationally because, you know.
It's everywhere. I mean, it's everywhere. And it's not just in London, it's where I live, you know.
It's like in the States as well.
Yeah, you know, go to Canterbury, Cathedral City, you know, all the kids are priced out. So, capturing that kind of hyper-realism, like neo-realism, I was sort of getting to, although that's kind of disappearing, I get that, but how easy was it to capture that look that you had, if that kind of makes sense?
Well,
because it's going, isn't it, I guess? That's
I mean, it's pretty much gone. In fact, someone told me after I shot the film that we should have gone to Camden. And in Camden, New Jersey, which is across the Hudson, we would have probably, it kind of looks devastated the way the South Bronx looked at that time. And I said, oh, that's great. Although then, you know, we'd be possibly subject to being ripped off, having our equipment stolen, things like that.
Oh, is it really that bad?
That's in Camden, yeah. I mean, the Bronx isn't like that. And maybe Camden isn't anymore. I mean, this was a couple of years ago that someone said that to me.
Dana, you lived there. I mean, we spoke about.
I grew up in the Bronx,
yeah. And then did you then move away, then come back?
No, I just went up to the Bronx to shoot the film.
Right, okay.
I don't live in the Bronx. I live in Manhattan.
Right, okay. The posh part.
It's sort of posh, but it's sort of like the poshness moved into my area. Became increasingly gentrifying. But
so, and when you're putting the script together, again, I know we've spoken about this, or I think we mentioned in the green room. I'm really intrigued about how you ended up with the final cut of the draft. Sorry, the final cut of the script, not the draft. The draft is the first one. But so what I'm trying to get at is the version you envisage when you were putting it all together, and the version you ended up with right at the end. I don't know how many drafts you went through, Judith, but was the story that you captured at the end how it began, or did it really massively change as you were putting it together?
You know, it's a strange thing with me, but it's pretty much how I originally drafted it. You know, with very slight modifications. And most of the modifications, and maybe additions, there was dialogue that I wrote in the Michael part, because the Michael part had a completely different style to it. There's very little dialogue in the Michael part.
Yeah.
And so the scene between Michael and his father, I actually wrote on the spot, because I really realized that I needed to have more of an exchange between them. And so that was something that I added, but pretty much everything else was written. And I think in the editing process, because I wound up editing my own film as well, that's when I again wound up maybe editing parts of the dialogue, shortening it, and then at the end, the ending, when the final scene when Michael shoots Duke, it cuts to Maria embracing Michael. That was an accident when I was editing, and when I saw it, I said, "Oh my God, that's great."
Keeping
and
that.
So I kept it, and that's when I also got the tagline, "Sometimes love is the end game," because I realized, I realized actually that all the parts, Maria's part, Mona's part, and Michael's part, really had to do with love. And so in Michael's part, it was most clearly articulated as this is like the final. What are we doing here? It's his love, his loss of his mom, loss of his best friend, and then loss of Maria, and all of that is just overwhelming. And when he kills Duke, he becomes like free of his past. You know, that's the way I conceived it anyway.
No, it's tight, because I think the runtime of it is only, is it 70 minutes or 72 minutes?
It's 1 hour and 44 minutes.
Oh, it's an hour 40, sorry, so that's 100.
But it runs, people, when they experience it, they really think it's really a shorter film. And
when do you envisage, that's a really silly question, do you envisage a cut time when you're making? Do you think, well, I don't want to go over X amount of time? Does it just the
No,
flow
I don't
not
do
work
that.
like that?
I don't do that. I just really cut it the way I see it, and then I'll review it, and then maybe, for instance, I originally thought my film was going to be like a 6-hour film.
Oh, right,
and I really love like.
And I bet it could have been. I bet you've got enough footage to
I
do that.
do have a lot of footage, and I love long films. And my DP, Tadeusz Ciesielski, or Ted.
Well, you need to talk about Ted.
He actually loved the idea. You know, he's Polish. He said also, like, let's make a really long, big film. Like he was totally into that. And so I thought it would be a much longer film. But then when I was actually reviewing it and looking at the footage, I said, no, I think it sort of works as a tighter film.
And then what Ted's done, the grainy look, I don't know if it's right, but it kind of looks washed out, which is deliberate. I know, I get that. It's really, but and that adds to the way the film is, the look, because it does look, and this is a positive, what I'm going to say, it does look like a drab look to it. And that, to me, was kind of a reflection of their environment and the lives that they were leading, you know. That's just how I felt, because, I mean, it could have been colorized, of course, couldn't it? You could have made it brighter and sharper and pop off the screen.
I don't know which version you saw, because it's pretty, I mean,
No, it just gives, perhaps I'm explaining myself badly, it gets back to this gritty look that he kind of gave the film.
I think that's partly because it was shot in SD.
Right, okay.
It wasn't shot in high definition, and you know, today we're used to high def, and we wanted something that belonged to the period, which was basically standard definition. Yeah. And so, but then everything has to be blown up to HD now, and so even though it should really be boxed, But in order to present it, we presented it, for instance, at the AMC in New York City, which is a standard theater. It's a major chain, and you know, it was in the Havana Film Festival, and I said, well, could it be boxed? Could I make it letterbox? And they said, absolutely not. It has to be full-blown HD screen size, right?
So if you shot it at 4:3,
and we did it,
or Academy,
yeah.
Academy, when you're blowing it up to fit an HD letter, I mean that will lose it.
It makes it really grainy, and so I was having like a heart attack over that. But actually, when it was projected, it worked. It was fine. There was just and actually I had some of my actors there, or a lot of my actors were there. But there's one actor who was he was in the Wild Bunch. He was with Sam Peckinpah, and he worked with Sidney Lumet in The Pawnbroker. He's an elderly man, and so he was sitting in the audience. And so when the film ended, I asked Jamie. I said, "Well, you know, I sat and I watched it, and it was fine, but I wanted other people's opinions, and I asked him. He said it was fine. He said he looked at the people and they were gripped.
Excellent.
They were totally absorbed in the narrative, and no one really. I mean, I could really tell that it was SD, but most people didn't. And I'm sure the festival would have pulled it if
it would have been horrific.
Yeah,
of course.
They would have pulled it.
So did Ted? Was the cinematographer?
He's excellent.
He was right into shooting on SD, because I imagine most time he would want to do HD or 4K or whatever standard. Did he go, well, at any point did he go, I can see where you're coming from, but I think that's a bad idea, to just go with it from the off? No,
he was intrigued by the whole notion. That's what I loved about Ted. He was always very flexible and very much interested in experimenting in different ways.
No, that's brilliant. And
I mean, in the green room, I mentioned that he actually built. He's also an engineer. He built a car mount for us. We needed. We couldn't rent one for. Nothing was really available when we needed it.
So he made one.
And he made one. He had access to like an iron shop, something. And
aren't those people annoying when they're really gifted like that? They're really annoying when they're that gifted.
They're annoying? No, they're not.
In a nice way.
No, they're really useful.
They're very useful. So. What's next? Have you got? Is there anything you can talk about?
Well, I was talking to Gwen about a script that I think I'm going to submit it as a script to one of your festivals.
Okay.
And well, I have two. One is called The Dark Room, and the other is called The Couch. And I mean, there are a couple of projects, other projects. Right now. I'm currently doing a short, which is rare. I never worked with shorts, but it's called War Games.
Right.
And it's like an anti-war piece, and so that's a specific short.
Great stuff. And just finally, we touched on this earlier. I'm really intrigued by this. You referred to it as an NGO, non-charitable. Can you just tell us, because you're involved in something, well, obviously involved in lots of things away from the camera, but something in particular that you're involved in?
Oh, prdream.com?
Yeah, the PR Dream.
prdream.com is a website. It is actually the first Latin American, call it Latino website on the web, period. There wasn't anything like that on the web. And so it really focused on Puerto Rican culture, the diaspora, meaning mostly that moved from the Puerto Rico, the island, to the United States, and it's basically my mother's culture.
Right.
And so I really, it was an homage to my family and to the people of Puerto Rico, who were actually undergoing, after Hurricane Maria, devastated
horrific.
The island.
Yeah, absolutely bloody horrific.
And but they're so it's really a website, a cultural and political website on Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican diaspora.
And it's not for profit, isn't it?
It's a not for profit, and we used .com because we wanted to really have it as accessible as possible. You have to remember, you have to turn the clock back to like 1998, when most people were only just figuring out what the web was.
Dial up,
so,
broad, dial up,
so
and all that stuff. You know, it's
yeah,
terrible, isn't it?
we use the modem. So like we have clips of Nuyorican cinema, which is Puerto Rico has two cinemas. There's the island cinema, and it has the diasporic cinema. And so Nuyorican cinema is the diasporic cinema. And so my film is a Nuyorican film.
Right.
And so it has the website has a lot of different cultural aspects to it. It has painters, it has some literature, it has some scholarly stuff on it, and it's still like the first iteration of the web, so it's very old, and the videos are very small because it was a dial-up at the time. But I hope to be able to bring it up to the present. And this is pre-Facebook. Yeah, yeah. You know, pre-everything, really. So, and that actually was a way for our film to be sponsored. You know, Pure Dream sponsored, gave us a space to cast. It gave us basically a lot of resources that we're able to tap into for the film.
Fantastic.
You know.
Really, really, thank you so much for that, Judith.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
It's good
lovely.
to see you.